Have you ever wondered why ideas that teach peace, awareness, and compassion can be treated as threats by those in power? How could verses written thousands of years ago still provoke fear in modern systems built on control? The answer is unsettling. True liberation does not require permission. It requires knowledge. And the most dangerous knowledge of all is not how to dominate the world, but how to master the mind. Imagine a world in which human beings no longer respond to fear, no longer crave external approval, and no longer seek salvation from outside authorities. That world begins the moment you realize that thought is not just a mental echo, it is creative energy. It builds, shapes, and sustains the reality you live in. This is the foundation of an ancient text that has survived empires, wars, and censorship. A collection of 423 verses known as the Dhammapada. For over 2,500 years, its message has quietly subverted the very mechanics of psychological control. While kings built armies and empires fought over territory, the Buddha and his disciples explored a different frontier, the architecture of consciousness. They discovered that the true battlefield lies within, the struggle between awareness and ignorance, attention and distraction. What terrified those in power was not a religion or a new ritual, but a way of seeing that made obedience impossible. The opening lines of this teaching still vibrate with clarity. We are what we think. All that we are arises from our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. Hidden in that single verse is a revolution. If the mind shapes reality, then no institution can own your destiny. No priest, no ruler, no corporation can sell you meaning or forgiveness. The creative force they monopolized was always within you. Across history, those who profit from dependence have tried to bury this truth. Totalitarian regimes burned monasteries. Empires replaced introspection with dogma. Even modern corporations and media systems echo the same pattern, keeping attention scattered and minds distracted. Because a focused human being cannot be manipulated. The Dhammapada's real danger lies in its simplicity. It does not require belief in complex theology or blind allegiance to authority. It asks only that you observe your mind and understand how suffering begins. Anger, greed, fear, these are not imposed by destiny. They are conditioned reactions that can be undone. And once you see that, no ideology can chain you again. At first glance, the verses seem poetic, almost harmless. But read deeply, and you realize they dismantle the psychological scaffolding of civilization. Neither father nor mother nor any relative can do as much good as a well-directed mind. In those words lies the death of dependency. The Dhammapada offers no savior outside yourself. It invites you to become your own witness, your own healer, your own teacher. The great paradox of control is that it must keep people convinced that happiness depends on something external: approval, wealth, consumption, belonging. A world built on that illusion thrives on dissatisfaction. It needs you to feel incomplete so that someone else can sell you completion. The Dhammapada cuts straight through that illusion. There is no fire like desire, no trap like delusion, no snare like craving, no river like greed. It doesn't condemn pleasure. It reveals how addiction to pleasure turns freedom into servitude. Think about it. What would happen if millions of people stopped chasing illusions and began cultivating inner stillness instead? The engines of consumerism would lose their fuel. Fear-based politics would lose its audience. The endless market of anxiety would collapse overnight. The real revolution is not fought in streets. It unfolds in consciousness. This is why so few are taught how to think, and so many are trained what to think. The Dhammapada, like a quiet flame, reverses the process. It restores autonomy to the mind. Do not believe something simply because you have heard it. Test it, and if it leads to good and benefits all, live by it. Those words were the first manifesto of intellectual freedom, long before modern democracies spoke of it. But what makes this ancient knowledge scientifically relevant today is that it anticipated what neuroscience now confirms. The brain is plastic. It rewires itself according to habit and thought. Every moment you think a certain way, you strengthen that pattern. Every moment you bring awareness to a thought, you weaken its control. Modern science calls it neuroplasticity. The ancients called it mindfulness. In the 21st century, the battle for the human mind has changed form. No longer fought with swords or decrees, it is waged with algorithms, notifications, and endless noise. The new empires are digital. Their temples glow in blue light and their priests are screens. Yet the strategy remains the same. Keep attention fractured, keep emotions reactive, keep individuals dependent on external validation. The antidote is the same as it was 2,500 years ago: self-awareness. When you learn to observe thoughts instead of obey them, you break the spell. A mind that watches itself cannot be enslaved. It becomes a clear mirror reflecting truth instead of reacting to illusion. Just as rain cannot penetrate a well-roofed house, says the text, so desire cannot enter a mind that is well guarded by awareness. At its core, the Dhammapada is not about worship. It is a manual for inner engineering. Each verse functions like a line of code written to debug the human operating system. It removes the viruses of fear and hatred and replaces them with clarity and compassion. When read daily, its rhythm slowly reprograms the brain towards serenity. Modern neuroscience has shown that regular meditation alters gray matter density in areas linked to emotional balance and empathy. Ancient monks already knew the result, even without scanners. Inner peace radiates outward, transforming communities. This is why every empire fears the awakened individual. One person who has mastered their mind is beyond control. The teaching of non-duality, the understanding that separation is illusion, is perhaps its most dangerous revelation. We are conditioned to see the world as fragments, nations, races, ideologies, brands, but consciousness is seamless. The verse says, "Hate never ceases by hate, by love alone it ceases." This is not sentimentality, it is physics of awareness. Division creates resistance, unity dissolves it. A mind that sees no enemy cannot be weaponized. The modern world thrives on polarity. It sells outrage because outrage glues attention. It keeps people locked in psychological war because that war powers entire economies. But when you realize the mind invents enemies to sustain identity, the game ends. Compassion becomes the ultimate act of rebellion. The Dhammapada also redefines power. Greater than conquering 1,000 men 1,000 times is the victory over oneself. That single sentence overturns centuries of imperial logic. True mastery has nothing to do with domination. It is freedom from compulsion. A person who has conquered anger cannot be provoked. One who has conquered greed cannot be bribed. One who has conquered fear cannot be ruled. Such individuals are impossible to manipulate. They embody what every tyrant dreads: calm confidence grounded in awareness. Their presence exposes the artificiality of fear-based authority. The more they multiply, the less power hierarchy holds. And that is why the most subversive knowledge in the world is not hidden in vaults. It is hidden in plain sight, ignored by design. When the Buddha spoke of renunciation, he did not mean escape from life. He meant the art of letting go of illusions that drain vitality. To give up lesser pleasures is to discover a greater joy, the joy of being free from addiction to impermanent things. In our time, That renunciation means withdrawing from the constant chase for attention, validation, and comparison. It means remembering that silence is not emptiness. It is intelligence waiting to be heard. Renunciation, in this sense, is not asceticism. It is discernment. It is choosing depth over distraction. Every time you resist the impulse to check the screen, to react with anger, to judge impulsively, you reclaim a fragment of consciousness from the machine. Multiply that by millions of people, and you have a collective awakening. Modern science continues to stumble upon what sages always knew, that consciousness and matter are entangled. Quantum experiments show that observation affects outcome. The observer and the observed cannot be fully separated. What we perceive as reality is a participatory field responding to attention. In poetic terms, the Dhammapada said it first, "With our thoughts we create the world." This understanding shifts everything. It means personal transformation is not selfish, it's catalytic. When a single person rises in awareness, the entire field adjusts. Inner coherence radiates outward like resonance through strings. Every peaceful mind subtly reduces chaos around it. The true revolution, then, is vibrational. Control systems cannot compete with that kind of influence because it doesn't attack, it harmonizes. It doesn't destroy, it reorders. The calm person becomes the invisible architect of balance. Gandhi, influenced by similar principles, showed that nonviolence is not weakness but strength aligned with natural law. Martin Luther King Jr. echoed the same vibration. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Each was, consciously or not, a living Dhammapada. The text also redefines what it means to serve others. In many ideologies, self-neglect is glorified as virtue. But burnout benefits the system, not the soul. How can one who has not found their own way show the way to others? The verse asks, compassion without clarity collapses into exhaustion. Self-care and service are not opposites, they are reflections of the same awareness. When you nurture inner balance, your presence itself becomes medicine. Look at our society. Endless stimulation, endless opinions, endless division. People are praised for productivity but rarely for peace. We are rewarded for speaking louder, not thinking clearer. The Dhammapada calls this blindness. The world is blind, few see clearly. That line pierces across centuries. It describes our addiction to noise, our fear of silence, our confusion of movement with meaning. Yet in the quiet mind, perception sharpens. You begin to see patterns. The way propaganda hooks emotion, the way consumerism mirrors craving, the way fear masquerades as morality. Awareness does not make you superior, it makes you responsible. Once you see the machinery of illusion, you cannot participate unconsciously anymore. At this stage, many ask, is enlightenment withdrawal from the world? The answer is the opposite. When the mind is still, engagement becomes precise. You no longer act from compulsion but from clarity. You no longer serve the ego's agenda but the rhythm of life itself. This is what the Buddha meant by right action, not moral obedience, but conscious alignment. As neuroscience maps compassion circuits and quantum physics explores entanglement, the old gap between science and spirituality closes. Both point to the same revelation. Everything is interconnected. Every thought, emotion, and action sends ripples through the field. Nothing is isolated. The myth of separation collapses. This is why awakening is revolutionary. It cannot be mass-produced or legislated. It spreads silently, through resonance. The Dhammapada predicted this centuries before chaos theory or systems science existed. When enough individuals embody awareness, the collective shifts. Systems built on fear disintegrate not through violence but through obsolescence. And perhaps the most radical verse of all whispers, look within. You are the Buddha. In those 4 words lies the ultimate threat to any hierarchy. You need no intermediary to reach truth. No doctrine, no ritual, no permission slip. The sacred is already the structure of your own consciousness. The journey is not toward something new. It is the remembering of what has always been. That remembrance cannot be sold or censored. It emerges in stillness, in curiosity, in honest self-observation. It does not demand you abandon your faith, your culture, or your science. It simply asks you to see clearly. Once seen, deception loses its grip. This is the hidden knowledge feared by every empire, that liberation begins in perception, that no matter how powerful the system, it cannot dominate the one domain that remains sovereign, the awakened mind. So take a moment now. Breathe. Observe the breath entering and leaving. Notice thoughts as they rise and fall like waves. You are not the wave, you are the ocean beneath it. That recognition is freedom. If humanity were to understand even a fraction of this, our civilization would transform. Economies would realign around sufficiency instead of scarcity. Education would teach introspection as rigorously as mathematics. Politics would lose its emotional bait. Warfare would fade because empathy would make it obsolete. Utopia would not arrive by decree but by design, an inner design. The future of humanity does not depend on more data or faster machines. It depends on consciousness evolving faster than technology. And that evolution begins with each observer deciding to observe differently. You do not need to flee society or reject progress. You only need to bring awareness into each moment until life itself becomes meditation. Then every action, every word, every silence becomes a verse in your own Dhammapada, a living scripture written through you. The most dangerous knowledge in the world is not secret. It is simply ignored. It says, master the mind and the world changes. Look within and the illusion dissolves. Real power is inner clarity, and once you see, you cannot unsee. That is the hidden revolution, the quiet return of consciousness to itself. It does not demand followers. It only requires awareness. And awareness, once awakened, cannot be ruled.